This is one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me. My family lived out in the middle of nowhere, at least an hour or so drive into town. So, whenever the family wanted to go and visit relatives or friends, it took a really long time to get anywhere. Of course, when I became a teenager, I had to stay home more often due to schoolwork, or at least that was the excuse I used in order to get to remain home by myself. This was in the late fall. My parents and sister had gone out to visit my aunt and uncle. I stayed home that time though to supposedly work on my homework. I honestly really can't remember whether I had any to do or not, but I guess that's not really important. Our house was situated on top of a hill. It was a real beautiful place too. The yard was huge, both in the front and back, but the front yard was much larger. The only thing though that we kept in the backyard was this old shed. It was an old wooden shed and seemed almost older than the house was. There were a lot of really old tools when we first moved in too, but we never really used them for anything. There I was watching TV. It was a little while after the sun had gone down at this point in time. We had a dog at the time, a collie. I was sitting in the couch in the living room and he had spent some time sleeping at my feet. At some point though, the dog just randomly perked up. It caught my attention right away because I assumed he must have heard something. He was doing that thing dogs do when they perceive something that we don't. He kept looking around anxiously too. After a few moments, the dog got up. He walked through the living room, then into the kitchen. The kitchen faced the backyard. There were these sliding glass doors, so I figured the pup just wanted to go outside and use the bathroom. I got up and walked over to the sliding glass door. I opened it up and let the dog run out. He immediately started barking though, in what seemed like an extremely aggressive way. I then closed the door and turned on the back porch light. Once I did though, the dog just kept barking. He wouldn't get off the porch either. At first, I couldn't tell exactly what it was he was barking at. Then though, I noticed the scariest thing I had ever seen in my life. The door to the old shed swung wide open, and this gigantic dude came out of it. He was carrying one of the old tools, a big pickaxe. I slid the door back open and hurriedly called the dog back in. The man stared over at us and watched us. He didn't move at first. It took a moment to get the dog back into the house, but he finally came in. I locked the door right away, even though I knew it was a futile thing to do. If the guy really wanted to get in and hurt me, it's not like a glass door would stop a pickaxe. I took the dog through the basement door. I locked that, and we ran down the stairs. I began looking around to see if there was anything I could use as a weapon. I had no idea who the hell this guy was, or why he was here. The only thing I could find in the basement to protect myself was an old baseball bat. While I was in the middle of grabbing it, I heard a crash from the upstairs. It sounded like he'd broken down a regular door though, not the glass one. The sound was terrifying, because now I knew there was a huge guy with a pickaxe in my house. I tried hiding under the stairs with the dog and bat held close to me. It didn't take long before he made his way over to the basement door. He began pounding on it heavily, and finally busted it open. I was scared that he really was going to come kill me. "I know you're down there," he said in a large, gruff voice. "The axe isn't for you, but you never saw me. Do you understand?" I wasn't even able to reply. I just cowered there with the dog. "You never saw me. Do you understand? Answer me or I'm coming down there myself." "I never saw you, I promise," I yelled back at him. There was a quiet moment. Then he answered back with words I'll never forget. "If you tell anyone you saw me, I'll come back for you." "I never saw anything," I repeated. There was another quiet moment. "Good. You better not forget it." I heard the man leave and open the sliding glass door. I waited in the basement for a long time with the dog. I was too scared to come out. I didn't know if the guy had actually left, if he would keep his promise, or if he was just messing with me. I had no idea, but I was extremely terrified. When I eventually came up, there was very little actual damage to the house. There was definitely no one still there, though. I tried to clean everything up and lock up as good as possible. I initially thought I should call 911, but in the end I didn't. I hate to admit this, but I was too scared by his threat to tell anyone. When my parents came home, it took a lot of courage to explain to them what happened. I was extremely scared while we talked about it. I couldn't keep it from them though in the end because the house was damaged, but I didn't give them the best description either. As far as I know, nothing ever happened with that guy. There were no murders or break-ins or anything like that reported that I heard of. I don't know why that guy specifically wanted our pickaxe. I can only hope that he didn't use it to hurt anyone. We lived in a really hilly area. That's the best way I can think to describe it. We lived right at the bottom of a hill just off a dirt road. There was another house sitting right on top of a steep hill, right across the street from us. Although we lived in this house for a really long time, the other house was a rental property, so there were often a lot of different people who would rent there for short amounts of time. I don't exactly remember a whole lot about most of the renters, but there is one that I will never forget. The father was a truck driver and wasn't around that much due to this, but when he was, the semi-cab was parked right on top of the steep driveway. It always kind of freaked me out, because if it ever rolled down the hill by accident, it would have gone right through our house. One of the kids who lived in the house was really obsessed with horror movies, mostly Freddy Krueger actually. He was also the sort who liked to try and scare people, but unfortunately for him, he was never actually really any good at it. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, I stayed up watching some movies. At one point, though, I decided to go outside on the porch and watch the fireflies. Snuck a beer out, too, and had a nice relaxing time observing the scenery and drinking it. After a while, I saw the light in the living room from the house up on the hill go off. I didn't think too much about it, but after a while, I noticed that it looked like someone was creeping around the house. It was very, very dark though, so I couldn't quite be sure. The only light was over by the truck, but I could tell that perhaps it had to be that kid. It was someone dressed like Freddy Krueger after all. I knew it had to be him because of his obsession with that character. At the time, he even had the board game. I called out to him, "I know it's you, Johnny." He disappeared behind the house. I kept watching, and after a while, I watched him emerge from behind it. He crept over to the semi-cab, climbed into it, and quietly closed the door. Then a series of things happened that I'll never forget. I heard this strange noise, and I watched that Freddy Krueger jump out of the cab. The cab began to slowly roll down the hill, picking up speed. It was aimed right towards my house. It seemed like I was frozen in time, but I'm sure the long moment that I was sitting there was only a second or two. I jumped up and ran into the house screaming. I tried to get my parents and sisters to wake up. They all quickly came into the living room, and I screamed at them to get out of the house. Before they had a chance to try and calm me down, I ran out the back door, and they thankfully all followed me. It was fortunate that the truck was apparently stuck in neutral, so it didn't start rolling down the hill super fast. We didn't get out of the house in the nick of time or anything. We actually had some time to spare, but there was nothing we could do but watch as the cab rolled down that steep hill, across the road, and slammed into our small house. I can't seriously tell you what it was like. I mean, it was almost like something you would see from an action movie, but obviously not as cool in real life. It didn't go totally all the way through the house, but it smashed itself in and embedded itself very deeply. If I hadn't gotten my family up in time, I have no doubt they could have been injured or even killed. So what happened after that? Well, my dad ran up to the house on the hill and began pounding on the door. He was demanding that Johnny be taken out of the house. The parents came out and there was a lot of yelling, of course. Johnny came out though, dressed completely normal and acting like he had been sleeping the entire time. Well, the problem was there was no way anyone could prove that Johnny had actually done it. Everything I'd noticed was completely circumstantial. I thought it had been him because he loved Freddy Krueger, but no costume was ever found. In fact, his parents refused to buy him anything like that because they despised horror. They did, however, have to pay for the house. Having the truck cab parked like it was happened to be very dangerous. If they had parked it sideways, then it would definitely not have rolled down the hill like that. Those people moved out not long after that, but that was definitely the scariest moment of my life. I once came upon a really terrifying incident completely by chance. It happened when I was 13 years old, when I had what was probably the worst day in my entire life. Now, I didn't always get along with my older brother. I mean, I did a lot more when we got older, but we would get into fights a lot when we were younger, like brothers often did. He was also a lot bigger than me too. So, when we were in our teenage years, he could really be a dick, and that made it hard to defend myself. We moved around a whole lot at the time, and when this happened, we were actually living in my aunt's house. This is a little weird, and I probably shouldn't even explain it, but at the time, she was given a job and a free place to live. She didn't want to sell the house, but it was too far out into the country for her to commute to the new job. So, we moved in there. We weren't big city people by any means, but it was the first time in my life I really lived right out in the middle of nowhere. My dad and stepmother would often go off random places, visit people, get real drunk, that sort of thing. Whenever they did, my brother and I would be home alone, sometimes for a very long time. I'm talking days long. Well, this time on a hot summer day, my brother and I had been alone at home for several days now. My parents were visiting relatives about 4 hours away. My brother, as usual, would get into his bossy mood, and it would really anger the hell out of me. This was probably around 10 p.m. at night. My brother was just being a total jackass, trying to order me around. He would tell me things like get up and make him a sandwich or something. He would also send me into the other room so he could secretly watch my father's porn tapes. I got real tired of it at some point, so I just went and left the house. It was all just getting to be too much, so I thought that a long walk along the road would make me feel a lot better. I left the house and started jogging along it. God, it was so hot out that night. I began sweating bad as soon as I got out. I was too annoyed and a bit scared of my brother, though, to go back. Now, this was a very, very rural area, and we had not been living there long at all, so I had no idea where I was heading. I was also one of those people who would go for a walk and get really lost deep in my thoughts. The road was ground level, but eventually branched off into the hills. I decided to continue my walk through that area. As I walked out further on the road, I began to get a little scared, actually. There were more and more trees, and it was beginning to get really, really dark outside. I kept pondering to myself when I should turn around and try to go back. Suddenly, I heard a creepy voice call out from the dark in the woods. "Why are you walking in my woods?" "What the hell?" I exclaimed. "You know, it's easy to murder in the dark," I heard the voice reply. It was coming from a little bit up the hill. I looked and saw there was a shadow standing there. It wasn't very perceptible, but I could see he was there. "You know, I can see you," I stupidly replied. "Oh, then I'll come a bit closer," he said. I began seeing him heading fast down the hill. I moved to get away, but as I ran to the far side of the road, I tripped on some gravel and began tumbling down the very large hill. I kept rolling, unable to find my balance, hitting things along the way and getting completely scratched up. It was terrible, and I was in a ton of pain by the time I eventually stopped rolling. When I got up, though, I couldn't see the guy anywhere. I didn't think he wanted me to follow down that long hill trip, but I ran the rest of the way home and finally made it to the road anyway. I was completely tired and exhausted and scared out of my mind. Walking home was terrifying. It was pitch dark, and I kept expecting to run into that guy again. Thankfully, I was able to get home safe and sound. Here's the good part of the story, though. When I told the story to my brother, he became completely enraged. He loved to pick on me, but he never liked it when anyone else did. He grabbed my dad's rifle and took me out to the car. He demanded I show him where it happened. I had to ride in the car back to the spot that I had the scariest moment of my life not long ago. When we got there, my brother got out of the car with a rifle, demanding the man show himself. He even actually fired it a few times randomly into the woods. It was crazy and hella scary. We didn't find the guy, and eventually my brother calmed down and we went home. But he still talks about that story even today. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any comments or feedback on what I could do better, or you just want to talk about the stories in the video, please be sure to leave them in the comments down below. I try to read every comment that comes, and I really enjoy hearing your guys' thoughts. Before anything else, I would like to give a special thanks to my friend Killer Orange Cat who allowed me to use these stories today. You can find a link to his channel in the description below, as well as a link to the Reddit post where these stories are found. He does some great work, so if you like these stories, be sure to check him out, as he has lots of ones that nobody has ever read before. If you guys want to contact me for any reason, or you would like to send a story in with a submission, please be sure to check in the description below the video. You'll find links to all of my social media, including my Gmail, Facebook, and Twitter accounts. Send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story submission, please be sure to include what the type of story it is, if it has one, the name of the story, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. Also, please be sure to format it properly and use proper grammar so it's easier to read if I actually use it in a submission for a video. Also, be sure to include as much detail as you are possibly comfortable with sharing. Overall, guys, I think that's pretty much about it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.